My grandmother Nanny, 91 years old, was bedridden for days leading up to this encounter. A few days before she died, she told me she saw good spirits around her. The day she died, she was extremely weak and unable to communicate. We tried our best to take care of her at home, but we could all tell she was dealing with pain. Her hands had completely hardened, and sadly, we had to put rolled washcloths between her fingernails and palms so that she wouldn't break the skin. That's how hardened they were. She was on her 10th day without eating solids. She had sores on her back. Many family members were in the room chatting and surrounding her as we sensed the end was near. A few family members left the room, but 3 stayed: my sister, my cousin, and myself. As she was lying in bed, I noticed she seemed in distress, although she had lost her ability to communicate. Feeling compelled to help, I silently prayed for her and played some quiet music on my laptop. Suddenly, I heard my cousin tell us to look at her eyes. Nanny's eyes were completely open, wider and bluer than ever before, and she appeared to be looking straight up at something. Her skin was turning white. It was freakish and startling. I believe I said, "She is seeing God." My sister and cousin could not move as they just stared in amazement. I felt compelled to get my mother and uncle, who were in the kitchen, to come and see what we were witnessing. They returned with me quickly. A total of 5 family members were beside my grandmother's bed as she was dying. Her eyes remained fixed on something above her, as though she was receiving a message. Some sort of light, either from within or reflecting from her, was illuminating her eyes. Her upper body seemed to be lifted or elevated. I can only recall this, however, because of the angle in which I saw her face. For some reason, I could not remove my gaze from her face, as though I was instructed not to look away. I got an overwhelming sense that we were in the presence of godliness, and although I could not see with my eyes what Nanny was looking at, I sensed it was either God, Jesus, or an angel. It seemed to have a male persona, was very tall, and gleaming a bright light. I saw this not with my physical eyes, but as a telepathic vision in my mind. I could clearly see the base of his long robe touching the ground. He seemed to know everything about Nanny, as though he saw her entire life in front of him. He would best be described as authority personified. I felt extremely honored to be in his presence. As such, I knelt down in prayer out of respect for both my grandmother's fate and because I was in the presence of this powerful and otherworldly being. I sensed that he was telepathically commanding her to follow him. I felt him say something akin to, "Come with me." Even more shocking, the sense of exhilaration and joy we felt as she was dying and leaving to follow him was overwhelming and far more powerful than anything that can be experienced with the human brain. It was like we briefly tapped into a much broader, unifying consciousness, a sensation which is not replicable. No words can possibly do justice to describe the energy we felt. Oddly, I immediately recognized this feeling. It was home. It was so familiar that it felt more familiar than anything I've ever known. I felt more alive than ever before. Nanny made some gentle movements, opening and closing her mouth as she was leaving us. Moments later, she was gone, and her limp little body lay peacefully on the bed. I don't remember much immediately following the encounter, except for feeling a strange combination of wild excitement and shock at that moment. Everyone was talking about the incredible energy we had felt and how mind-blowing it all was. None of us had ever heard of a shared death experience before this experience, so it was extremely difficult to process what had just occurred. We did not know that what we saw and felt during Nanny's death was even in the realm of possibility. Our various reactions confirmed that 4 family members present felt a magnificent energy during this encounter with a higher power. This energy was never directed towards us, but somehow we sensed the promise that awaits us after we die, and it was the most beautiful moment of my life. After the event was over, the family members and I discussed our own accounts of what had happened. There were some notable differences. My mother saw Nanny rotating her shoulders as though they were immediately healed from years of pain and loss of function. She also saw Nanny somewhat levitating off the bed. My sister did not have a shared death experience, but was a witness in the room. She said that Nanny's body never lifted off the bed. My theory is that my mother saw Nanny's soul rotating her shoulders, not her human body. I was the only one to have a visual image in my mind of the light being, but my uncle, mother, and cousin all felt his presence just the same. 4 of us felt the incredible energy that permeated the room. Strangely, no one in the room had tried to look up where Nanny was looking. In terms of side effects, it was emotionally challenging for me after Nanny's death. I wanted to grieve for her normally, but that was seemingly impossible. The experience played over and over again in my mind for at least a week straight. I did feel like I was going a bit crazy. I abruptly fell into a sort of depression-like state for a couple of days. I longed for the same sensation of exhilarating energy that I felt when Nanny died. Eventually, I recognized that it was an honor to have an SDE, a shared death experience. I am eternally grateful to have had this experience for several reasons. It's wonderful to know that my grandmother is in a better place. In addition, I've had a measurable drop in my heart rate since this event occurred. I was previously diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and have taken medication previously to treat anxiety in the past. I now feel my anxiety is somehow lifted since this experience. I feel more love for others, including strangers. I don't think I will ever be able to fully process what happened, but I am grateful nonetheless.